Greetings, YouTube. Alan Loop back. It actually has been a while this time. I decided to just take a break from the game, and it's not necessarily because of like the meta or like I don't like this or that or Bravo or Guardian or whatever. I just, just with personal life and things, I just wanted to take a break from the game. I wasn't going to Amsterdam, and unfortunately, I had to cancel my U.S. Nationals trip. But back on the channel with me is Taotao Chu, resident, North American Uzuri main. And if you didn't know, he got 35th at the Pro Tour with Uzuri. And as many of you probably already know, Uzuri won the whole thing. Shoma took down the whole event. So it's kind of crazy that, two Uzuris entered the Pro Tour and one got 35th just outside of top 32, probably just some tiebreakers, and the other one won the tournament. So yeah, I definitely think Uzuri is going to be popping up more, whether it's your locals or Battle Hardens or maybe even like future Pro Quests, depending if Rosetta changes things up. But yeah, so to start things off, I'm just going to go ahead, because I'm sure most of the viewers here already know Taotao. He's been on the channel like a few times now, Assassin main. But why don't you talk about why you picked Uzuri over New for Amsterdam?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, I thought Uzuri was actually pretty bad. I wasn't expecting to actually do well with this deck. So what happened with me was I played like all three of the new Misfield heroes a bit. Played new the most, and then I tried it in paper, and I was just like so annoyed at having to flip over the double face cards all the time that I said I'm not playing any double face cards. So it turns out, four of the top heroes, like the Misfield heroes and Prism, all have double face cards. So I can't play any of those. So like, well, what do I play? Back to my old standby Uzuri. So I was totally expecting to just get dunked on, but I didn't get dunked on. Actually did some dunking. And then our boy Yamamoto Shoma did even more dunking and got to first place. So I think both of us like took a pretty like a meta oriented approach. If you look at the spread, it's like it's all Zens and
the
Zens
spread
and news.
Of the tournament, yeah.
Like at the tournament, yeah, the metagame was like it was all Zens and news, and then it's like a decent amount of other heroes, but also Gem I think was in both of our favors at the Pro Tour because Shoma only went up against Zens and news. I also only went up against Zens and news, right? I played against 4 news and 4 Zens in CC. So like those are kind of the matchups you're looking for. There's like like the next two after that, you probably don't want to see too much of Enigma. Prism's like it could be okay, but not usually not great. Kale's fine. Azalea's pretty good. Victor's fine. Kano, you definitely don't want any of that. And then Dash, if they're on like the turtle build, you also don't want any of that.
Oh, there's no turtle Dash anymore. Let's be real.
No, there were actually multiple turtle
really?
Dashes. Yeah, some of them were doing okay. I was shocked. And then like the Levias, it's like just another flavor of aggro brute. I think the matchup's fine. Like Riptide, fine matchup. Bravo, Fatigue Bravo. There were a few there, and basically what they did was they said, well, the way you beat New is to like run a bunch of really bad blues that New can't play, right? You just don't run blue attacks. You just run like the auras and like Terra Sunder and whatever. And so, like, one of them got to 4-0 on day one, and then I think they all dropped out by the end. And then Bolton, I think, if you're playing Bolton, you're probably kind of coping a little bit. Dash IO, like, kind of similar. Like, maybe you can high roll like literally everybody on Dash IO. Max, there's no way, right? Reinhard, like Dory, the Warriors. Like, I commend the 5 Warriors who brought their mains to the event. I think that's even worse choice than Uzuri.
Well, 10 Warriors. Like, hold on. There's Bolton, Dory, and Kasai. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. I don't really count. I didn't really count Bolton because like I thought he's like kind of his own thing, right?
Yeah.
Like and Dory and Kasai are kind of like the classical warriors. And then you got the 2 Uzuris who are the absolute champions.
Yep.
Secret geniuses. Knew exactly how to play the meta. And then you got like of course some randos who are playing a Teklo and a Fi just for fun, right? Yeah. So I guess let's. But before I go into like the deck list itself, I'm gonna rant a bit about like the part of the Visceral meta. So like viewers, if you don't want to hear this and you just want Uzuri stuff, skip ahead a little bit. So
like rant section.
When you when you look in hindsight at like how this Misfil season is going, and you look at like the Mystic talent, you kind of have to wonder like what were they thinking when they released the Mystic talent in this kind of broken state. Because like Bravo would actually need something like this to I bet you if Bravo got this card, he would not be able to beat Zen consistently.
Okay. I'm pretty sure you would, but yes, I see your point.
Okay, so like think about just like the talent as a whole, right? Mystic that is like a blue oriented talent, right?
Yep.
So everybody knows that in Flesh and Blood, blues are pretty good. Like almost every deck has blues because they're the most efficient when you pitch. You want to pitch your blues to play your other cards. So what happens when you have a talent that's focused around blues, and a lot of the cards are essentially make the blues on rate, like damage wise, with reds. So you're turning your blues into reds, so that means that you can run a bunch of blues in your deck, but they still function as blues. Like that's just inherently broken, right? Like for example, I think one card that really exemplifies this really well, and that is not being called for a ban by anyone that I'm aware of, and it's like I don't think it's like even particularly broken. Yeah, levels, right? If you look at levels of Enlightenment, I think when we talked about this initially at like when we were discussing like in Assassin, I thought it was like kind of just okay in Assassin, but I was totally wrong. This card is like pretty sick in every mystical hero, and if you look at the text, like look at how Zen uses it, right? What you do is you pitch a blue to play this, and then you hold priority. You play a cheat card, you flip it over, and you pitch to Zen, and then you let this resolve, and you pick two modes. Usually it's like go again, draw a card, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have like a pretty easy to fulfill condition where if you have another cheat card in your hand, one of your up to 9 cheat cards, then you get to play 1 for 3, go again, draw a card. Your cheat card also has probably 1 point of value attached to it at least, and then like your hero ability is worth at least 1 card, right? Essentially, this card is basically like Belittle, right? Belittle is 1 for 3 go again that with a very easy condition you get a Minnowism out of your deck.
Yeah.
And this card is like a 1 for 3 go again, very easy condition, you get another card out of your deck. This time a random draw, which is often a random draw is better than getting fetching a Minnowism, right? Because you also don't have to deck build by including Minnowisms in your deck. In addition, Levels of Enlightenment is a blue, right? And Belittle is a red, right? And it blocks 3. So it's like
hold on.
Straight up just 2 points better than Belittle, which is a banned card.
But Levels is majestic.
Okay, you got me there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you know what else is majestic?
Yeah.
Art of War.
Oh,
and
yes.
I think it's like in that ban announcement with where like they were talking about why they chose to ban Bonds of Mastery. They were talking about, we were considering Strides of Reprisal, we were considering Ancestral Harmony, but actually we decided that Bonds was a problem. They didn't say a single word about Art of War, and I thought that was incredibly disingenuous by LSS to like not mention like the most broken card in the entire Zen deck, right? But this card was broken when Chain was banishing Blood deck cards, and you can play them. This card is still broken when Zen's banishing Crouching Tigers to draw real cards, right?
Yes.
Okay, forget Leviathan. Leviathan will survive. Like, I think actually some of the newer builds actually aren't even running Art of War right now because like they want more consistency with the Shadow Realm horrors.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think people have brought up that like, or at least not LSS, but like the community has brought up like a lot of times these problem decks, like other cards get hit, but it's never Art of War. Like Chain, you have Seeds and then something else, and then the next one is Stubbyfy. Stubbies is gone, and then Belittle is gone, but not Art of War. And then now with Zen, it's the yellow and blue bonds, but not Art of War.
but not the red bonds, yeah, because that's fine. It's not like you can just like preserve tradition to put it back on to get a 4th one, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
So you're not a fan of this metagame.
I think the gameplay in this metagame is hugely uncompelling. Let me talk about like quickly about like the games I played. So I played 4 games against New, 4 games against Zen in the CC portions, right? All the New games were very close, quite grindy. A lot of times we were getting down to like almost fatigue, and New was trying to like blast me with the cards from my banish. I was trying to like poke her with like my last daggers, and I like one of the games I won was probably due to an opponent throw. One of the games I lost against New was probably due to my own like punt. But like those are like not really like even like a major bad decision. It's like small micro decisions that end up making it being on the wrong side of the razor's edge that you're trying to balance in this assassin mirror. I think those games were actually really really good. Now my Zen matches went okay. Like I high roll 1 Zen. I high roll a 2nd Zen, and then the 3rd Zen, he tries to like he blocks with the fridge and he tries to pop off, right? He goes like Ori Home, drive 3 cards, this round's on me, draw a fourth card, levels, draw a fifth card. He doesn't find one of the two Art of Wars left in his very thin deck. So like he plays Sacred Art and he like attacks with 5 tigers, but they only come in for one, and he doesn't get there because he doesn't draw Art of War. Okay, and then like the fourth Zen, I'm like way ahead in life. I miss Disruption on one turn, and he goes like Art of War, banish a tiger. Art of War, banish another tiger. Levels all 3 modes. The Bonds line. He like attacks with 10 real cards, and I have like my hat and my gloves, and like also this that all you got draws me an extra card. So I block was like 7 cards plus 5 off of gloves, and I die from 20 life. So like that's the kind of gameplay like we're getting out of Zen. You know, the decks that are favored against Zen at this point, like basically Nu and Uzuri, they're favored because they can disrupt his good turns, but like you still have these games where you miss one turn of disruption. Oh no, he's just gonna blast you for your entire life, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I think to a degree that's okay, just because like this has existed somewhat before, right? I mean, maybe not to the extent, right? But like the Katsu to an extent,
not,
like if you
not
miss
to
a turn,
this,
but Zen,
well, not
like
to
the
this
ceiling is definitely much higher, right?
But with Katsu, like even if you miss disruption, you could block out his on hits, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like he can't do the multiple bonds nonsense if he doesn't hit you.
Mm-hmm.
To discard. Like it's almost impossible for Katsu to just have it. But Zen, he just pitches a chi and he has it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started playing Flesh and Blood in like the Starvo Prism chain meta. So like back then, the power level was quite high, but like even a Starvo Casino high roll you, like that still takes like 5 turns of him like smashing you with big things.
Yeah.
Before you go down. Whereas Zen only needs to do it for 1 turn. Yeah, so that's why I'm rather unenthused about this current meta. I really like the heavy hitters meta. That like yes, you still had your high rolly like KO games, but still you had like a lot of viable like physical damage combat that felt like actual back and forth. And you had like the Dromai on the side here that was kind of build nerve permanence, and she was like the put permanence on the board kind of deck. You had of course some Kano diehards playing Kano. And that felt just to me like a lot healthier. Maybe right now the meta game is a little more centralized. I know like some pros prefer if you only have like 3 decks in the meta, they kind of counter each other. But my take on the current meta game is that you have this classic issue where you have like a level 0 deck that's like way better than everything else, and then a bunch of level 1 decks. So what I mean by that is like a level 0 deck is when you try to put together the deck that only cares about what it's doing and like what's the most degenerate and most powerful thing that you can be doing while ignoring everyone else, right? And in this case, it's clearly Zen. He's trying to push through the most amount of damage, and then every like level 1 deck beyond that is like the decks that can stop the level 0 deck from doing what you're doing. And of course, that would be the assassins, possibly Azalea, and maybe like a Guardian with the right types of blocks, and also possibly Prism, because even though she is kind of trying to do her own thing by putting down a lot of permanents, a lot of those have to do with like restricting what the opponents can do. Like you got your parables, you got your ALS, that sort of thing. So the problem with like when you have a deck like Zen is that he is the level 0 deck, where like all the other level 0 decks, like the Brutes, they just cannot compete, because KO can beat a lot of other decks that aren't Zen, but when you put them up against Zen just does more damage, and KO doesn't really have disruption. So like you're just racing each other, and Zen's going to win the race most of the time. And that's also why like Enigma, who like in a vacuum is very powerful and does like a really good job of putting down stuff on the board. She's not as much of a meta threat because she's not actually a level 1 deck. She's a level 0 deck. She's trying to do her own powerful thing, like smack you with a bunch of wards, and those wards also prevent damage, but like she doesn't have inherent disruption. That's why like some people are playing stuff like pummels and like a bunch of generic attacks inside Enigma to try to become a level 1 deck, but like that's not as good as playing a true level 1 deck like Assassin, where all like most of your cards are disruptive, right?
Yep.
So like this is the kind of meta game where you're just like you just have this level 0 deck that's like way better than everything else. And I kind of that kind of also puts me at like in a cynical state about the upcoming Rosetta set, where it's another talented set, and as we all know, like talented heroes are the only heroes that have ever LL'd, right? Like every non-talented hero is like still in the pool basically. And like every time you have a set that releases with broken talented heroes, then you kind of just wait for them to LL before you can kind of play your heroes that you want to play if you want to play like the non-talented heroes. And Rosetta being another talented set, you're gonna have, I can see like you either have a situation where they are so powerful that they can keep up with Zen, in which case you have like another problem, or they're not powerful enough and Zen is still the boss level 0 deck and he's like smacking everyone around and like every other deck is trying to stop Zen from doing what he's doing. Or they have another Vanlist update and I don't know, maybe Art of War finally gets banned. So I'm really down on the state of the current metagame. It just I think ultimately like we play games to have fun, and I don't think these Zen games are fun when you have a deck that doesn't really respect the need to like have skill in the matchup. Not to say like playing Zen takes no skill. Of course, you're gonna have a baseline, but like at a Pro Tour level, everyone is gonna have that baseline level skill necessary to see the sequence needed to do 50 damage in a turn. And maybe if you stumble on your sequence, you only do like 45 damage, right? But it's still like
yeah, I guess like
how do you outskill your opponent when he's like smacking you for that much, right? Like is it the problem that you're not skilled enough to draw into your disruptive cards? Is that really the game you want to be playing?
Yeah, I think that. So first of all, I agree. Like, I don't think that like people should say that Zen is like a no skill deck, and I think that obviously like the top performers on Zen do so for a reason. But I will agree there probably is a truth that every player at the Pro Tour, when gifted a hand that just high rolls and kills your opponent, they will do it. It's not like they're gonna miss that. They're gonna miss like the little itty bitty things or like little matchup things that like push them to that next percentage point or whatever. But in general, if you hit the harmony, Art of War, then like every player is going to do that, right?
Right, like if I have like Harmony and like a Descendant and an Art of War in my hand and like a five card hand, and my opponent's attacking me with a non-disruption, and I have like my hat and my boots still, like what am I gonna do? I'm gonna block and where to go off, right?
Yep.
It's like come on, like yeah, that's just how the deck plays. So of course, like no shade on anyone who decides to bring Zen to the Pro Tour. I think he was probably the best choice. But well, it's like that's just the kind of gameplay we ended up with. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because in the past, whenever a hero was hit with a ban, regardless of how severe it was, there generally was a pretty significant drop-off. And I know the ban was pretty close to the Pro Tour, and I know the general consensus was that Zen is probably still pretty good. But to see, like, national season, Zen's very prevalent, but he didn't win, like, the most, right? Like, I think it was New that won the most technically. But then you can argue, like, small nationals, big nationals, whatever, right? But then going into the Pro Tour, you still have 3 Zens in the top and then 3 News in the top. And it's very much like, did anything really change? It was just like, kind of.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked at how little the Bonds ban affected Zen in the end.
Yeah. I guess my next question would be like, some people have said in the past that, or like people in the space say that, like, even if there is a best deck, as long as it's not so egregiously best deck, like there's still counters, there's still counterplay. People can sometimes prefer that because you can target Zen. Like, for example, you're playing Uzuri, a deck that naturally targets Zen. You could play Victor with Disruption. You can play Azalea. You could probably try like Sandscour Azalea or something, or any other, disruptive deck, right? And like you can kind of plan around the metagame better than like an open meta where people are just going to bring like a bunch of different things. But I mean, even in heavy hitters, when people called it an open meta, like I think everyone kind of expected KO to just be, the most played, right?
Right. I'm not sure what the answer is to that because in Flesh and Blood you have this like class fantasy of really people want to identify with the hero that they like and they want it to be good, right? And obviously with this many heroes in existence, it's not possible for all of them to be good or even viable.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have decks like Zen that are just clearly way better at aggroing down the opponent than any other aggro deck, then if you want to play a different aggro deck, you're kind of accepting that you're just like playing an inferior deck, and that's a lot of feels bad. And that extends to not just like the pro level, but like every level of competition. Why do you show up to Armory if you're playing like Dory or you're playing Max, and then the top tables are all Zen all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's just like I won't say too much more about like the health of the metagame or whatever. I'm not like exactly a pro player, but I do play this game like primarily to have fun, and I think having one aggro deck that's just way better than everything else is not very fun. So Okay, that's enough about complaining about the mystical heroes. Let's talk about Uzuri.
Let's toss to Uzuri. So
Right. So yeah,
what? At
I
least
love Uzuri,
matchups
man.
wise, it's like so obviously you pick Uzuri over New for personal reasons. Like if
me
you
did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
like gun to your head, you'd be like, all right, you got to win this tournament tomorrow, and someone else is playing, like some really good player is playing. Which deck are you picking? You're picking New, most likely.
Probably Zen. Probably Zen.
Okay, sorry. Between Uzuri and New
Oh,
specifically.
yeah. So, like, okay, going into this tournament, I thought like New had a generally better matchup spread.
Mm-hmm.
I think the matchups where like she has an edge over Uzuri are Victor for sure, because you get to play his blues,
Guardian, yeah.
and he, unlike Bravo, he can't cut his blue attacks because he needs to win clashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the Enigma matchup. I think like for Uzuri, the Enigma is pretty doomed. I'd really be curious if we could get Shoma on sometime to ask him about like how he feels about the Enigma matchup, because I think it's just god awful, like less than 20%. Even if you're like sort of teched into
I
it.
mean, you got the pick, the blue pick.
Yeah, the blue pick. Yeah, sure. Surely that's enough, right?
Yeah.
um, and then but I think New has like a little bit better play into Enigma because again you can play her blues, you have more reactions, so you can like try to get over her D reacts, that sort of thing. And then I think New just like against like the like the lesser played heroes as well. Generally you're like a little more threatening because you can like her damage is a little bit harder to avoid, I think, than Uzuri's, because she just has more reactions. However, like in my personal experience, like with the build I played, I felt about 50-50 into New. I think with Shoma's build, like for the matchups we had, Shoma's deck list is like definitely superior to mine, because like I think he's very clearly teched into being good against Zen and New, and maybe sacrificing a lot more of the other matchups.
Yeah.
And I think I hedged a lot with some of my card choices, which with a metagame like this, it's probably not the right choice to like try to hedge your matchups and to weaken your most likely matchups. When you have like for example, yeah, this null rune gloves was definitely wrong, right? You should have been AB0. So like when you put hedges like that, that just means you have fewer slots to focus on your core matchups that you expect to be playing, and you do need to like get a little bit lucky with your matchups, but like at the Pro Tour level, nobody's ever won a Pro Tour by being unlucky, right?
Yeah.
If you run into your unlucky matchups, doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world, you're gonna have a rough time. So
Yep.
yeah, like both of us got pretty lucky with the gem roulette, and I think I capitalized less well than the Shoma did. I was 2-2 against New, which is about what I expected. Like I thought the match was pretty even, and 3-1 against Zen, which is also about what I expected. Like slightly favored. So. Let's talk about like I guess the core similarities, right?
Yeah.
So like looking at the equipment, let's talk about the chest tunic. There's no other choice.
Yeah, you
must
love
have
tunic. It's your favorite card.
Absolutely, like it's just the best chest, right? Like what could ever replace it? Yeah, generating 1 energy every 3 turns. Yeah, so the assassin needs this like more than like most other heroes, because dagger into a 2-cost attack is one of your bread and butters, right? Like straight up like flipping into CNC or pitching for a CNC compared to like Spider's Bite into CNC, there's a world of difference there. So you gotta have tunic, and then balance of justice as your head. So I tested Mask of Perdition quite extensively, and I ultimately decided that it's not good enough.
Yep.
Balance of Justice, it's good into most of your core matchups. Obviously Zen. Enigma not so much, but like Enigma's again pretty doomed. New again not so much. She doesn't have much card draw, but then like everything else like like you got
Prism,
all the brutes, all the brutes. Yeah, Prism, of course, and then Victor as well. Even though like he doesn't have like much native draw, he, because of everyone's on like the physical main state. By towards like the late game, he's gonna have like quite a few gold stacked up, and late game is when he has a lot of blues and he wants to like draw multiple. But if you pop 1 gold, you end up with like 1 energy point extra, right? So if you pop 2, you end up with 2 energy points extra. If you pop 3, then you have 3 energy points, or like 1 entire card extra. But with Balance of Justice, if he pops 2, you draw an extra card. So like you're actually up against him until he drops essentially the 4th gold. So like it forces him to only pop 1 gold per turn, which is actually a pretty good deterrent in the late game against Victor. So you have like other options like Crown of Providence against decks that want to CNC you. I don't believe it's worth a slot. Does Shoma have it in his list?
He does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's like if you have enough slots to spare, you could run it. My guess is that
I mean, this is also what you were saying, right? Like your list was more of like a generalist approach to like hedge into even the bad matchups, whereas Shoma's list was very focused. Like, I'm just gonna make the best 80 for like these 4 decks, right?
Right, and like Crown like is clearly superior against New than the Balance of Justice because you can dodge CNC, and New like basically doesn't draw cards. Like maybe she can like double levels or something on 1 turn, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Mask of Perdition, like the only reason you'd run it is that if you want more consistency with the Bonds of Agony getting the 3 reactions, and Uzuri does have a much harder time getting 3 reactions than New does, but I don't believe it's worth the extra slot, just because like most of your core matchups you're already going to be running Balance, and this Mask, because it blocks for 1 less, it's like your contract count is like also way lower than before because of the new inclusions from Mistveil.
Yep.
So just getting back that silver is not nearly as likely. So yeah, I don't think it's worth it there. Boots Black Tech Whispers, as Uzuri, you don't have another choice. This is your silver outlet. This is your go against Source. This is your reaction for Shakedown. This is your reaction for Bonds of Agony. So of course you run this. Flick Knives, similarly, like that's your main arms piece. Where flicking a Nerf Scalpel is like way worse than it used to be because very few opponents
D-reacts now.
Run D-reacts, yeah, compared to before at least. Like New still runs them. You got to be careful when you flick. Like I had one game where I flicked probably a little too early, and it cost me. But still, like being able to close them out on 2 life. If you can hold it until they're down to really low life, then essentially they can only go to 2 instead of 0. That's pretty good. And of course, it blocks for 1. So that's your core choice. And then your alternate gloves choice is a Stonewall Gauntlet, where I think I find it very interesting that Shoma's not running this at all. This thing blocks essentially 4 to 5 against Zen. Whereas Flick Knives, the key use for it is against Zen is like probably like you dagger, like you send the first dagger and then you flick the other dagger, right? So like essentially you get 2 daggers for the price of 1 attack. I'm actually honestly shocked that he's not running this, because like generally when you block Descendant, it's like because they have to play bonds and like the following tasks and like the following tire or whatever like on the same chain. Like bare minimum you get 3 points of block, but usually it's 4 to 5. I'd really love to pick his brain about like why he's not running Stonewall Gauntlet. I think it's just a great card against Zen. Nullroom Gloves. Okay, so this is most definitely wrong. I basically I didn't have the balls to go to AV0.
Yep.
This is actually not for Kano, because like Kano's doomed anyways. But
Vincent.
It was actually for like I basically said to myself like if I run into like the one Vincent there and I lose because I don't have AV1, I would never forgive myself. So I threw in the Nullroom Gloves. But yeah, it could be like actual cards in your deck instead. So don't be a coward like me. If you're going to a Pro Tour and like there's only going to be like 2 Rune Blades there, like don't run the AV1 just to counter those 2 Rune Blades.
I think the hope is that with Rosetta coming out, AB will hopefully be respected again, but. We'll have to see.
Sure, yeah. Maybe in Rosetta that you'll want that AV1 or something. Also, like the other gloves that we are both running is the Vambrace. So now I really want to ask Shoma about this because like why is he running Vambrace and not Stonewall Gauntlet, right? If you're expecting more Zens and not these like Enigma matchup, like it's so bad.
Maybe he cracked the code on it. I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe it's like all the red shreds and the
spreading plagues,
the 3 spreading plagues. Maybe that's the way. I think it's terrible. And having tried like a variety of configurations.
I watched him play spreading plague in one of his top, I think in the new game versus Shing. I was like,
it's great against New. Yeah, because like New like loves to block like sometimes if you're sending like a 6 power and she's like, well, I'll block with these 2 cards from hand and like also my boots and also my gloves and like 4 blood rots. No problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Spring Plague is a great card. I'll talk once we
Yeah,
get to it, I'll talk
we'll
about
get
why
there.
I didn't include it. But yeah, so Vambrace for me is also like actually quite good against Prism, because I think just overall in testing, my Prism matchup is like fine. Maybe not like advantageous or whatever, but I'm okay. Like I feel comfortable in the Prism.
Yeah.
And Vambrace is one of the reasons for that, and because against Genesis, especially if they have like Genesis and an Angel, like if they have that means they have an Angel and a Spectral Shield, and so like your first dagger, they have to respect the first dagger, right? They can't just like Spectral Shield it, so they have to like block it out if they want to stop their Angel from dying. And of course the daggers have piercing, so they can't just block it with boots. So
Mm-hmm.
Vambrace makes that really powerful. I really like it against Prism. Enigma, like of course you bring it in against Enigma anyways for the 20% of the time or less that where you do win, but yeah. Um,
The Prism
and
respect.
then, and then times
To be fair,
I
there
respect
was a lot of
I respect
Prisms.
Prism.
There was
I
a lot of
respect
Prism.
Prism. I didn't match up against any. I did play against one like, in like a side event later, but like yeah, not in the main event. The time skippers, I think it's actually quite good because most of the time you actually don't use the time skippers. They're just there,
To make
and
them play differently.
it forces the Prism to play differently. And actually, like you'd rather not use this thing because it costs 3, right? It's kind of expensive to pop them. But like you
I
kind of
mean, you
forces
got
the
a lot
Prism
of
to like
zero cost attacks, a blue and pop pop, and you're good to go.
yeah, like or like two if you have 2 blues and like and a
Well,
tunic counter, right? Like
I
you
guess
pitch
the
the
hard
first
part
blue
is
and you
that like if they do loop you, you have to actually kill the angel, and you don't have like a zero cost attack that comes in for 4. I don't think.
oh leave no witnesses.
Oh, leave no witnesses. Yeah, it would
Yeah,
have to be
and
or E strike. Not just E strike.
codex
Yeah.
for leave no witnesses or E strike or looking for a scrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I think it's not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for a scrap especially is like a great card, in a lot of matchups, but it's really good for killing angels.
Mm-hmm.
With your first attack. So yeah, yeah, time skippers I think it's quite good against Prism.
Makes sense.
Okay. If you go back to like the card view,
Yeah.
of either or decks, like so, I think there's just like some really clear similarities that we should talk about in the main board. So like your core cards, right?
Yeah. The
That we've
CNCs,
every deck tech
shakedowns, just
has talked about
Yep.
before. Okay, so CNC, of course you run CNC. That's like the best disruptive card in the entire game. Shakedown, that's one of Uzuri's best disruptive cards.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Leave No Witnesses and Surgical. Those are your like assassin disruptive cards that are really
Surgical.
good.
Yeah. You got the
Yeah,
leave
yeah.
no
Okay,
witnesses.
and
Yep.
then
The
yeah,
classics.
you got 3 weakest links. Like you're running weakest links because all the
Hey, I
mystical
remember you
heroes are
said
really
this
good.
card wasn't gonna be that good.
I lied. This card's great. Okay, actually, sometimes it's really bad because like sometimes you have the turns where you throw it against Zen, and then they just take 6. They show you your hand, and then they play it from Arsenal. They play the cheat cards from Arsenal, and,
Yeah.
and you're just miserable.
I think it's
But a
funny.
lot of
Yeah.
time, like it forces them to like just block out or like just burn their cheat card so that you don't draw a card off of it.
Mm-hmm.
For no value, basically. Yeah, it's really good. Codex of
Codex,
Frailty,
classic.
one card 8 essentially, or better
You
if
know
you have
what's funny? Back when Outsiders came out, I made a video during spoiler like pre-release season talking about like my top 10 cards, and I actually didn't put Codex of Frailty as number 1.
Oh, you just missed it.
But I put Bonds as number 1, and you know what? Bonds got banned.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's fair.
But look, like a year ago, looking back on that take, I was like, wow, this is awful. Codex is a crazy card. And then I see Zen, and I was like, Bonds. I knew the card was too good.
Yeah, you were just ahead of your time,
Yeah, I just needed a broken hero to make use of it.
Also on the D reacts, okay, actually, yeah, let's talk about the D reacts.
Mhm.
So like Sync Below and Favor saying, we're both running all 6. Like
Inertia trap.
it blocks 4. Like that's good. Okay, the other D reacts, he's running 2 inertia traps. I'm running 3. That all you got.
Mhm.
Inertia trap, I think is like kind of contentious, or at least I contend it. I am not a fan of inertia trap for a couple reasons. First of all, as a red, it only blocks 3, which it automatically makes it inferior to Sync and Fate. But of course, you're already maxed on those. So inertia trap, the times when like it truly is useful and knocks out a card is when they have a D react that they want to keep in their arsenal, and that's usually Zen doesn't have that. Nu can have that, and it could be good against her. Also, I just, in my personal experience, I find that like a lot of the time when I play Inertia Trap and it actually gets rid of a card, I also have an Arsenal Destruction card in my hand the next turn. And I'm just looking at this Leave No Witnesses like, man, I could have gotten an extra red out of that, if they Arsenaled the red.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my personal experience. I'm really like not fond of this card. I've tried it just a number of times, and I've just ended up cutting it every time. I'm running That All You Got. instead,
Mhm.
that all you got has massively overperformed for me in basically everything. And it's like I like never cut this thing card for anything because it just even against like the um, decks that have powers always more than two, it's still
It's
good
on
as like
rate.
it's a it's on rate yellow D react.
Mhm.
So that you can arsenal to cover more damage. Yellow being very important because you have a lot of 2-power attacks that you can just pitch the yellow and swing in with it. And then when it's good, like it just draws you an extra card. Like Uzuri and Assassin in general is not great at blind draws for like the turn that you're using it, but it is very good at
Setting up
blind
for the
arsenal.
next
So
turn. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you can pick draw a card. Pretty much every card in your deck, when you drop blind, you can just arsenal it for the following turn. So I think that'll you guys really good. It's good against both Nu and Zen, right? Against Nu, you block her daggers. Against Zen, you block the Kakara. I'm very surprised that Shoma's not running this card. I think it's just really fantastic against both of those core matchups. Good against Enigma, blocks the spectral shields that come in for 2, and then like the rest of the field, still
Mm-hmm.
3 block D react, no
Yep.
problem.
The one
Um,
annihilate
and
the
then
arm. This is the only card where I was like, come on, Taotao, you gotta let go, man.
I can't let this go. Actually, the reason why this is in here is that like I originally had multiple sensors in this deck
Mm.
that I was running,
Yeah.
and I eventually like cut the. I was like on 2 weakest links, and I cut the second sensor for the third weakest link, and then like I just kept testing it, and like sensor just like underperformed for me every time. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'll throw this out. What I need in this slot? I need a 1 for 5. Annihilate the Armed, my old friend. I think it generated like 1 silver for me the whole weekend. It's probably bad. Don't run this card.
Yeah.
Also, a funny story about Sensor. My very first round of the Pro Tour was against a new, and he hits me with like 3 sensors. So the first 2 do nothing, and the third one, like I ponder. So like I played a Codex the previous turn,
Yep.
and then like I ponder off a CNC into my arsenal, and I get like 2D reacts and then 2 blues, right? 2 useless blues, pretty much, in that matchup. And he goes like a sensor. And I block for 4 with one of my D reacts and take 1, and he names CNC. And I'm looking at my hand like, oh no, I have to dagger and play this blue and just to do 1 damage with the blue. Oh, it felt so bad.
Well,
That actually lost me the game right there.
he doesn't know that like the last card you're holding is a D react, and maybe he respects the swap. You know.
Oh, well, I mean, he didn't respect it, which was correct, by the way. Like
Okay.
generally in this assassin matchup, like there's a lot of like no blocks going on because we don't want to like get blown out by the reactions, right? So um, anyway, I've just like not been impressed with Sensor. Even when you hit against Zen, like you name Tiger and then they go off with a Bonds line, and then you name Bonds and they go off with Tigers. So
Yep.
it's not been impressive for me. Annihilate the Armed, 1 silver, that's like half a point armor, and 1 point armor is basically 2 life worth of block. So it's sort of a 1 for 6, right? If you can like cope really hard, yeah.
Yeah. I outside of that,
So actually,
I think most of the blues are the same, but like
yeah.
already dead versus
Actually,
amnesia.
another similarity. So I think Already Dead and Amnesia are like is actually closer to a similarity than a difference.
Mhm.
Both of them are like your kind of your filler 2 for 6 that
Yeah.
is not great. So Amnesia, like it was really good against Katsu. Against Zen, I think it's just mediocre. Like it stops their crouching tigers from being crouching tigers, so like it stops those lines. But it doesn't stop aspect of tiger body from just like getting the getting the over 3 go over again. It doesn't like it doesn't stop the cards that ask for colors. It does stop bonds. So like if you have like a lot of Zen, which we did, I think it's probably better than Already Dead.
Yeah.
Where Already Dead has actually really shined for me is that because we're running more Go Again, like both of us are running 3 Easter eggs, right? I think Easter eggs is just a great generalist card because 2 card 7, or like if you have a wide hand, you can actually like Assassin, especially Uzuri, has hard times converting a very wide hand. So having that 2 card 5 Go Again is pretty good. But when you have that like a 2 card 5 Go Again, or if you have like Looking for a Scrap, which is like 1 for 5 Go Again, great card. They often like want to block the Easter egg. Or the Looking for Scrap with something that's a non-action. Like maybe they want to give you some armor to like prep for another turn, or they want to like give you D-react to like 4 to cover part of that 5. If you send an Already Dead after that and they don't respect it, you banish 1 off the top. sometimes you can get like an instant, like one of their cheat cards to get a silver, and also you can banish a D-React or an equipment from a previous link. Like I banished a boots this way from a previous chain link
And that'll get you a
to.
second silver.
It not only does it get you silver, but it denies them equipment, right? Like they wanted to get the battle worn one value before they could pop off their slither or something, and then use banish that entirely. So I've been pretty impressed with Already Dead. I think against Zen specifically, Amnesia, because it does stop both Tigers and bonds, like it stops their massive pop off turns, but I don't think it stops their general value turns. Which Zen, they have like their little value turns in between their big pop off turns, and often that still is like more efficient damage than what you can put out. So
yeah.
And these are like I think it's okay, but like it's still I think clearly a filler card.
Yeah, just one's for Zen, one's for other stuff, basically.
Yeah.
One's probably more expensive, so.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why this card is like, what is it, $40 or something? Just a
last I checked,
nonsense.
Because it came in, it was bright lights, so that's why.
Okay, let's talk about the blues. So of course surgical. The Majestics, right? The Persuasive and Prognosis and Bonds of Agony, like. So before you can talk about the blue stealth cards, you have to talk about Justin Nick, right? The card's absolutely insane.
Dude, this card won him like his top 8 into his semifinal.
To be fair, I think in that match, I think Xing misblocked there. I don't know. Maybe he had 3. Yeah. Maybe he had like 3 chi in his hand, but like
he had 2 chi and he had a Codex and a 3 block. Right.
So like look at what happens here, right? He comes with a pick to pieces. If there's like no cards left in his deck, and and Shoma has like 2 Justin Nicks played and the 1 that's still in circulation. Like obviously it's going to be Justin Nick to bring pick to pieces up to 7. So if you block 3 there, you just die, right? I think that block was like way too optimistic.
Yeah, I think.
Well, like it's easy to analyze.
It's easy to say. Yeah, I think in the moment it's definitely understandable because I remember. Because I didn't know Justin Nick was in Arsenal, and when he blocked with Isolate and then played Pick to Pieces, and I was like, I'm so confused, but I guess like for the most part it doesn't matter because you're gonna swap anyways. But I was like, and like even if he blocks 3 and you swap into a 6, like he's at 4, it's not gonna kill him. And then he went block 3 and then Justin Nick, and I was like, oh, that's why I Pick to Pieces got the +1. And then in that moment, Xing knew. He's like, oh, maybe he takes a little bit longer to block. He's like, oh, he blocked with Isolate, and then he played Pick to Pieces instead. He checks, he sees 2 Justin Nicks, and he's like, oh, this is coming. So then he blocks. And I mean, on his turn, the best he probably can't do too much because he has double chi in his hand, but he can still like activate new and then swing dagger and do some stuff. And then he was like quite ahead on deck, so I do think. If he blocks out that turn, he probably does.
Right, like you just block out.
Yeah.
Right. So like, okay. To be fair, I think like if he blocks 5 there, he still takes 2, right?
Yes.
And then the following turn, because Shoma's like basically out of deck, Shoma maybe can like play another stealth card, and then like what do you block 6 on that? Like
it depends how many cards he's up. Yeah, he could potentially win that way, but I'm not too sure either. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like on that turn specifically, like blocking 3 against that pick to pieces is optimistic. But yeah, Justin Nick. Okay, the card itself, fantastic. Turns your blues into 6 powers. In addition, I think with Prognosis, like Justin Nick Prognosis is one of the most powerful 2 card combinations you have. On hit, it goes like. The maximum potential is that you banish 2 cards off the top that are action cards, and then you banish another card from their hand that's an action card. 3 points of life gain, right? So it's a 2-card 9 that also destroys a card from their hand. That's like way more efficient than anything else in the deck. It's actually 12. Like on. That's like on par of efficiency with Bonds of Agony almost. Where Bonds of Agony, because if you jump through a bunch of hoops and one of your cards is Justin Nick, it essentially becomes like a 9, right? Like you can, let's say you play Bonds of Agony and then you play Justin Nick on top of it, and then you like break your boots and you flick a knife to get Bonds to 9. In which case, then it's a 9 power. Like it doesn't gain you a life, but 9 power, then you banish a card of your choice. And of course, there's a macro value in banishing more cards from their deck.
Yep.
But you have to jump through so many hoops that this card in Uzuri specifically is much worse than Persuasive Prognosis, which is just fantastic.
I mean, technically the hoops are there for the first time, right? Because
The
you
first
can
time,
always
yeah, but like
flick back
the
text
second
Uzuri, but the second time and third time is
the
like
second time I was like, nah,
the third
like,
time
it's
is
not
like
happening.
non-existent. Yep.
But but Persuasive Prognosis, like when you play the third Persuasive Prognosis, you can still flip into a Shakedown on the third time, right?
Yep.
And like a lot of times you have that fork when like you got 2-card hand, no arsenal, you play Persuasive Prognosis. Like even if they know your hand, it's impossible for them, and if they don't have to de-react, because if they block up front, then you flip over, and then if they don't block, then you can just like let it hit, banish a card, and then arsenal the Shakedown and do it again next turn, right?
Yep.
Stuff like that. So yeah, great card. I love these Majestics. I think they massively improved the power level of Uzuri. So of course you run these. The other blue stealth cards are a lot more interesting. So Pick to Pieces, we're both running them because of Enigma. Also,
And it's
you
just
know, there's
plus one.
value in
It's just
having
plus one. It
plus
won him the
one,
game.
right?
It won him the game.
Yep, two card 7, not bad. Damage can be prevented. Usually not that relevant, but sometimes maybe they're running an Oasis against you, and that works.
Yep.
And then isolates. So the number of isolates in Uzuri decks has been like just in constant flux ever since the
Yep.
introduction of Uzuri, right?
Mhm.
Like there have been people running like 9 isolates from the beginning, and I think funnily enough, the more isolates you run, the better the dominate effect gets, because you have way more consistent access to it when you want to flip. So that like even if they were prepared to block out like your first isolate with like a D-react, then the next one is like maybe a little harder, and like by the time you're playing your 9th isolate, they're running out of options to be able to block this dominate. So like you're hitting them way more often. I'm like because I'm playing like a much more dagger heavy like macro style.
Mhm.
I'm only on 2 of them. I think like I don't want to have more than 20 blues, which is like already a lot. Shoma's only on 15,
Yep.
and isolate. I think just like the face value is worse than everything. I'm running 2 because essentially I can block with one of them and still circulate the other one, and then finish the game with it at the very end. But if you want to be able to consistently flip into 6 powers, that's it's a fine choice. I think it's a fine choice to run more. You do open up yourself to the vulnerability of flooding your hands with stealth, right? And that's like when I was initially reviewing Part the Mistveil, I was one of the reasons I was very excited about a lot of these new stealth cards is that they do something on hit. So like when you have a hand that's like 3 stealth cards, you can still like actually have a turn. Like that's why I'm running Art of Desire Mind. It is like a little bit of a high rolly card. But against like Mistful heroes, at least half their deck's blue, right?
Yep.
So you play this. If they don't block it, there's at least a 50% chance that you're banishing a blue, and you're drawing a card. That's like random cards like 3 points of value, and gain a life that's like 1 point of value. So like it's up to essentially 5 points of value or 1, right? So like maybe the average is like 3 points of value, which is equivalent to blue infect, which neither of us are running. And I think our Desire Mine is better than blue infect because you also banish a card off your opponent's deck, which is macro value. Speaking of infect, let's talk about Shoma's interesting choice of red infect. So I think blue infect is just wrong because it's just like a blue 1 for or blue 0 for 3. Even though that's technically above rate, it's just like so not like every Flesh and Blood deck that is worth playing is doing above rate things, right?
Mhm.
Blue infect is not it. Red infect is 1 card 5. Like that's significantly above rate, I think. Like we're running looking for a scrap because it's 1 point above rate, right? Red infect being 1 point above rate as a red, it's like been a staple in the very red line Uzuri decks, which don't exist anymore because of Just the Nick. If you're playing Uzuri, you must run Just the Nick because it's that powerful. And of course, you're running Persuasive Prognosis and Bonds of Agony because their effects are so powerful. So like essentially, you're partially a blue Uzuri deck anyways. And that's also why like with all these mandatory Majestic includes, not only is this deck becoming like these Uzuri builds, a lot of them are converging together, but they're also becoming more Majestic heavy and therefore more expensive. Like what is the price of this deck if you like scroll up to the
1350, 1390.
Yeah, okay. So just only a little bit more than a grand, right?
Only a little bit.
Yeah. That's like that's basically
because
my
you got
rent.
these already deads, man. No, I'm kidding. You can take.
Yeah, that's the real culprit. Right. So yeah, expensive deck. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Assassin has always been an expensive deck, but with more Majestics. But at least the saving grace is that MST is such a strong set that people open it like hotcakes, so the cards aren't actually like crazy expensive. Like imagine if
Mhm.
just a Nick and like if every Assassin Majestic in the set was like $20, that would have been crazy. But they're not.
Yeah,
So
that would suck. Red Infect. So being above rate as like just damage, I think it's been like it was good in the red line decks because it's sort of like that quote unquote impossible choice where you play the Red Infect and like if they block it with one card, you flip over, and then if they block it with two cards, you arsenal the attack, and that's really where you want to be as an assassin. And this like it kind of motivates your opponent to just say no blocks more often, which is fine because like you're flipping into destruction.
mhm.
Um, I've also like prior to the existence of MST, I was a pretty heavily testing Infiltrate, which I actually rather liked.
I
I
remember
think
that. Yeah.
I might test it again. Yeah, Infiltrate. It's the one like where on hit you banish a card off the top of your opponent's deck, and I can play it until the end of my next turn.
Mhm.
Um, like seeing Shoma's build, like it kind of inspiring me to try it again, even with like the amount of blue stealth that's kind of mandatory to run, because like the value of banishing your opponent's cards and like playing with them, like even if you banish let's say like like an on-rate card like a 0/4 that does nothing on hit, that's still essentially 4 points of value that you can block out with your whole hand, and then you can play that on your next turn, right? You're getting value off of that, which like over multiple turn cycles can be good, and better than Red Infect. The reason I cut this card was to like streamline my deck to be more blue stealth heavy, so I could play more Justin Nix.
Mhm.
But Shoma seems to be making it work where like he's still running the red infects and not any blue infects, and he only has 15 blues, but it's still working out for him. So I
Yeah.
think I
Even in the
might want
numerator,
to give
if
this
you
a try
take out
again. Yeah.
surgical, then that goes to 12. That's that's
Yeah.
that's scary. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like I mean, big value, right?
Yep.
So, and sometimes you take out a D-React and like you can block with it. There was one time like I took out a Shunt against a Dory,
Mhm.
and yeah, that was
Oh,
good
that's a good
times.
one. Yep.
So yeah, I like Shoma's choice of Run Effect. It's not something I would run personally, just because like it's not really my style. But I can totally respect the choice to like present that above rate damage that also threatens to either force blocks or like force you to not block essentially and get those disruptive on hits in.
Yeah, I mean, even like the worst case scenario is like you don't have a swap and you have like another blue stealth, and so your plan is to just bluff an arsenal. If they block with one card, you just still trade a card for a card, right? So it's
Yeah,
like, but
yeah.
I think the issue is like, um, if you ever presented a hand where you have like multiple, where you get to keep all your cards, and then red infect just kind of sticks out and doesn't do anything with the rest of your hand. So in that
Hmm.
situation, it's kind of awkward. But in a
Then you're
game
going like
where you
dagger,
want,
dagger, dagger.
yeah,
Yeah.
in a game where you're able to like to trade back and forth more, I can see it being really good. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, Speaking of trading back and forth, let's talk about Hurl. So we obviously don't have sideboard notes for this. I think like this is definitely much more of a sideboard card. Like head jab is not great for assassin because
Yeah.
you're obviously you're not keeping up with Zen in damage with head jabs. Like Hurl has the additional value of like possibly punching through ward with pay, and also like being like a pseudo flick
Mhm.
to push through an on hit with a dagger. I think like this card is good against illusionist, but I don't personally see the value against all other assassins or against Zen. So I'm curious as to where he brings this in.
Makes sense.
And then shred. Okay, so I'm
Ah,
running
the
three
red
yellow
shreds.
shred. Yeah, I'm running three yellow shreds. He's running like three red shreds. And I think three red shreds is a great choice.
Ah,
And like if I had more rune, like the cards he's like these reactions that he's running that I'm not running, like the red shreds and the
spreading
spring
plague.
plagues. If I had more sideboard space, I would be running these cards too. And one of the reasons I don't have more sideboard space is I'm running garbage like no rune gloves, right? And like and like what remembrance.
Mhm.
But shred. So like yellow shreds, I think are the best. Because they're yellow, you pitch them for a 2 cost, and or to a dagger. And red shreds, like I've generally seen them as an extension of yellow shreds, but that's fine. There's a there are decks now like the assassin mirror and also like a victor, and also like the brutes tend to block decently well, and even Zen wants to throw his fridge at you. I don't know if you bring the reds against Zen, but like I personally leave in the yellows against Zen, because like on his pop off turn, he wants to throw the whole fridge at you, and Shred gets through that.
Mm-hmm.
I love Shred. You can you can also banish a Shred. Like if they don't block, you can banish a Shred with the Uzuri to get a reaction for Bonds of Agony. I've done that a couple times.
Yeah.
Same with like your D reacts. So like it's kind of like ghetto new basically,
Yep.
where a new can just like use an equipment. But yeah, Red Shred, takes out usually 3 block against your on hits, and you got a lot of good on hits, so that's fine. And of course, Uzuri being able to flip into CNC. So like generally speaking with CNC, I usually choose if I just have a blue and a CNC, even if it's isolate, I would usually pitch the isolate for a CNC because it forces them to not de-react. Whereas like if you try to flip into it, they can like de-react out of arsenal, and you're kind of sad because like your CNC didn't do much. Whereas if you pitch, you basically always take non-de-reacts out of their hand if they're on de-reacts. However, the difference is if you have a Shred in hand, then it becomes different, right? Because like you isolate, or you like any other stealth card, they block, and then like you activate, and then if you're flipping into CNC, they have to
respect it.
They have to direct it. Well, they have to direct before the Uzuri flip resolves. Otherwise, they can't direct after it flips into the CNC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like they flip or they direct, and then you can shred them because you still have the stealth card technically as the active attack. So yeah, red shreds are great. I think like going into defensive decks or even pseudo defensive decks like new, great choice.
I mean, even in the finals against Zed, he just had Shred like 3 turns in a row, and every turn Bartosz was like, all right, I can't block through this Shred, I'm just gonna eat it. And he's like, Show was like, okay, you're gonna eat it, I'm an IP1 every turn with this Shred. And then he finally did play it, and yeah, he just won.
Yeah. And like speaking of which, like if you ponder like against Zen, if you ponder a Shred off of Codex, you arsenal the Shred. You just do it because like he's gonna try to shred. He's gonna try to fridge you at some point, and then you're just gonna have the Shred in arsenal. Like it's so good. Yeah, I love Shred. And speaking of attack reactions, Spreading Plague, I wouldn't run this against Zen. Like even if they're trying to throw the whole fridge of 4 at you, I don't think 4 Blood Rots is gonna make that difference.
8 damage.
Yeah, if they're at 8 at the point, like yeah, sure, but they might also just even if they're at like 1, they might just kill you on their they'll kill you before the Blood Rot does any damage, right? However, this card is great against new, also pretty good against Enigma. Enigma wants to block with cards, and then like Blood Rots are very tricky for her to keep wards up. So Spreading Plague is quite good.
Maybe this is the Enigma sauce, Yeah.
Also, like occasionally, if you run into like the Rogue Warrior, or also like against Victor wants to block with cards. So throwing Spreading Plagues, that's good damage. If you get two out of it, that's like a 1 for 4 on a reaction. So like no action point consumed, which is 2 points above rate. So actually, Pieces of Yellow is 3 points above rate. So quite a good card.
Yeah.
If you're being offensively minded, but against decks that want to aggro you, it doesn't matter if you're 3 points above rate. They're going to be like 50 points above rate. So yeah. So that's Shoma's list, and if you go back to mine, like there's actually Death Touch. So I'm running 1. He's running 3. I think 3 is like pretty ballsy, especially against Zen because this thing blocks 2.
Mm-hmm.
Against Zen, like most like these 3 conditions don't do that much, right? Blood Rot, he doesn't care. Inertia, he's going to throw out the whole hand at you, and Frailty, like he's one of the least Frailty affected heroes like in the entire metagame. I think like if you're playing 3 Death Touch into Zen, respect. It's not something I would do personally because of the 2 block, and it's also like it's very awkward to draw in multiples. If you draw 2 Death Touch in the same hand, you're essentially forced to flip into one of them and then arsenal the other, or block for 2, which is really bad. And if you don't have a stealth card to draw with them, then it's like extra bad. So not a huge fan of running this into Zen at all.
Makes sense. And then we have your other generalist tech. We got the Remembrances.
Yeah, so Remembrances are
your favorite card.
Yeah, my favorite card. So Remembrances and Last Jeffer are specifically for Riptide. I was actually expecting a decent amount there. And you know what? There were. I sat not against, but like next to Riptides multiple times, and I was like, oh man, I want to play against Riptide.
I teched for it.
I didn't. I don't know if I even teched for it. I just like playing that matchup a lot because like I can throw out my 3 for 7 without daggering, and like it still feels good anyways because like we get to like trade macro value over a long period of time, and that's the kind of game I like to play. And speaking of 3 for 7s, so I'm running 3 of them, 2 Battlefront Bastions and a Raging Onslaught. So this is for Prism. I respect Prism. I think like if I had more slots, I would be running like 7 power attacks just to pop Herald of Triumph. And I like 7 against Prism is just so much more than 6 when Triumph and and also Figment of Triumph and Parable of Humility exist. And if she has those, she's going to be running all of them, right? I'm not running all 3 Battlefront Bastions because like you really don't want to see multiples in one hand because like you're kind of forced to like block with one individually, and you can't even use them together with equipment, right? It has to block alone to get the 3 block value.
Yep.
When you pop with this, you still get the 1 extra point of damage prevention on the next Herald, so that's really good. Like let's say they come with a Herald, you pop it, and then like you have 1 floating, and they come with another like 5-power Herald, and you play a D-React. That's like you basically 2-card blocked 2 different Heralds, and only one of them was a popper. So it just feels really good. And then like the third one is just the Raging Onslaught because it blocks 3.
Yep.
I do bring these in like as filler. Like I actually bring in like a Battlefront Bastion against Zen because it blocks the Kakara and then a Tiger. But it's not compelling against Zen. Like you could replace it with other stuff if you have better stuff to run.
Yeah.
And looking for a scrap, I'm running 2. Shoma's running 3. I think 3 again is like a ballsy choice because it's hard to fill up your graveyard with enough 1-power stealth cards. When you're looking for scraps into a matchup, like if you go first, you must do your best to try to get a 1-power stealth into graveyard on your turn 0. Like without, if you play like the stealth card, don't flip into anything because you want it to get into a graveyard. Or if you're going second, then you want to block out with your stealth cards to fuel your graveyard as soon as possible. Because otherwise, like the worst feeling is when you draw looking for a scrap and you don't have a banished target, and then it's like a 1-for-4 no go again. It feels so bad.
Yeah.
But
I think like your
when it's good, it's
like,
really good.
Yeah, you have Pick and just a Nick. And then you have block, like if even in the new mirror match, because she banishes if you're like against if it's a stealth card, so you have to block like their CNCs with your 1-powers or stuff like that. So yeah, you got to really look out for it.
Yeah, but when it's good, it's really good. I just don't like drawing it early when I don't have enough fuel for it. So that's why I'm only running 2. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think the third, like if you have a third, you definitely run the third into Enigma and Prism because those are the matches where you really want to take out like Wars and Angels and such. So, yeah.
Oasis.
And finally, Oasis. This is not for Kano. This is for Azalea. I was getting like into so many situations where like the new Azalea decks where they're just running essentially like all buffs and all arrows and like none of the Ravenous Rabble or other fillers. They tend to go so tall that like having just like D-Reacts is not enough, and also like Remorseless and Release Attention like stop D-Reacts from working the way you want them to. So Oasis is to get around that. I do run this in physical matchups as well. In some physical matchups, against Victor, since I'm running kind of fat decking against Victor, I run a few of these, and then I've tried them into Zen before. Like the timing on, you really have to time your
tunic,
your tunic very well, and that involves like kind of doing like a bit of on the fly hypergeometric math. Like I have this like little.
I mean, it's one thing to time it with that whether you do it through math or whether you do it by feel, and it's a whole nother thing to they're all on the bottom and you held onto your tunic for no reason,
Right, exactly. So like it's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Like so like I have this like little table that I memorized that like I'm trying to see like what's the probability in the next 2 hands, and like sometimes you got to play the odds. Like if you got 30 cards, if you have like 30 cards left in the firch cycle and you have 2 Oasis left in your deck, you have basically a 50-50 chance of drawing an Oasis the next 2 hands. So that's like kind of the breakpoint of which you have to think: do I really want to tunic for the CNC right now, or do I want to save the counter for an Oasis? And it kind of depends on the matchup too. And I would bring this in also against Riptide just because like I don't care, like against Riptide I don't care if I'm pitching for pitching a card for Oasis. Yeah, like I'm just like I want to be as many cards as possible, and it's essentially in terms of macro value, it's a 1-card 5 if you're lower on life. So no problem there. Okay, so that's that's this comparison. I think like if you, dear viewer, are interested in building into Uzuri, you do have to be aware that like both Shoma and I targeted the meta heavily, and your local armory meta might be very different, right? Because you got people still running their favorite decks. You might have like a bunch of warriors, people playing
okay, I don't know about warrior. I'm pretty sure warrior's pretty dead even at the local scene, man. I mean, I'm
maybe
not one to talk.
mechanologist.
I haven't really gone to locals recently, but I would assume so at least.
Okay, but like different communities are different all
That's
the way
true.
across the
That's
world,
true.
right? So,
Yeah.
Assassin has always been a deck that because it's a level 1 deck, it depends on disruption and targeted disruption, right?
Hmm.
You only get 3 CNCs, right? And that's your generalist disruption. So like everything else has to be kind of targeted. So you do need to pay attention to like your own metagame and tune your deck to your own metagame. And it's similar with like if you go to Battle Hardened, you got to like try to predict the metagame there and see where you're gonna get.
Oh
And
man,
sometimes you're
battle
gonna
hardens are
get
a toss up, man. Anything could
yeah,
happen in
exactly. Like
battle
sometimes you're just gonna lose the gem roulette,
to
and you're
Tekla
gonna
in
match
the
up against.
first round.
You get. I think the Tekla Valsa matchup is actually heavily Uzuri favored.
Oh, okay.
If you just fat deck and
Kano in the
you
first
like
round. There we
you
go.
dagger a lot, yeah. But if you go like Kano against Kano 3 times, it's just awful, right? So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Indeed. That's the California life, baby.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that covered a lot of things already. Like, we have a good idea of what Uzuri's good matchups are generally. Like you said, the level 0 decks, the ones that just want to do your own thing, so you can disrupt them. And then when it
Mhm.
comes to like other level 1 decks, like obviously there's tech you can add to like make it better. Like if you run into Bravo or Victor, if you have Remembrance, Last Ditch Effort, if you fat deck a little more, you can play that prolonged game. Whereas
Absolutely, yeah.
if you're a deck more like Shoma's, where you're more focused on beating the level 0, then you lose percentage points into the other level 1 or 2 stuff that you might run into, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so like despite my negativity about like the metagame and like the mystical heroes, I really like Uzuri right now. I think not only is she like a really fun hero, but it turns out she's actually pretty good against in certain metas. And of course she can be built to target basically anything. Like even against Kano, like if you're running to Kano at your locals, and if they don't know how to do the pitch stack thing, you can run AB3 and just like run them out of cards if they're trying to first cycle you. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with her. If if you have the fat stacks of cash to drop on an assassin, but that's kind of the state of Flesh and Blood right now. So yeah.
I mean, most Kanos don't really stack. I mean, because they're on the Kindle stuff, right? But like, if they run into
it
fatigue,
depends,
they
actually.
do know you can still stack with the Kindle deck. You just won't. You don't need
Right,
the D
well,
reacts because
like you can take out your you can also take out your Kindles and bring in the D-Rex, right? Because you got the sideboard space. Like Kano actually, speaking of the Kano matchup, I'll expand on that a little more. It's like not exactly a 0% for Uzuri, but it's like maybe 5 to 10%. Like the reason being that like imagine you're the Kano player. You kind of have a choice. Do you want to go first cycle or second cycle? So if you go for the first cycle plan and you try to just boom them, you run into the possibility that the assassin is running AB3 and like I don't know, maybe a spell void as well. In order to combat a first cycle plan, and in which case you run the real possibility of like them hitting their Oasis at the correct time and then just decking you out essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you hedge against that, or like the way you counter that plan, is to go for the stack plan. So you bring in your all 6 D-Reacts, and then maybe you bring in like a couple of Oasis, and then you trim all your damage except for your Wildfires, your Blazings, and your Ether Spindles. And then you go for the second cycle. Well, the issue with that, like the second cycle plan, is that like you have to get to second cycle, and a lot of assassins like Shoma's Decklist and also me, like if I'm going into Kano, right, I'm probably running AB0, not AB1, because I want fucking ice. And you run in that case, you run the risk of the assassin just like actually killing you, like having the right number of shreds or whatever, and like the the spreading plagues and the right amount of go again attacks, and if you don't time your D-Rex correctly, then because you only have 30 life, you can just die, and you also you maybe can try to, like if you see AB0, maybe you can try for first cycle, but like you can't really afford to blind Kano.
And you Kano into a D-React.
Yeah, you Kano into D-React, right? Like it's definitely gonna happen at some point in first cycle. So it's still really bad for assassin. I think like the stack plan is just really strong. Kano, like the vast majority of the time, is still gonna get there to the second cycle and get to the stack. But it's absolutely not free the way I thought. I used to think it was, even with AB0. So yeah.
Yep, that's fair. And then Uzuri. So I think it's interesting because only 2 people brought the deck. You being one of them, Shoma the winner being the other one. And you guys both play extremely well. And it's just like
Yeah, 100% conversion rate into top 64, right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
also 100% conversion rate from top 8 to winner. So
Yeah,
clearly this deck is good, right?
clearly Uzuri best deck in format. But the thing is, like,
Right.
I I wasn't keeping up too much with the meta, but like I watched here and there what people were saying about the meta. And once new came out, everyone, at least from my experience, put Uzuri pretty low, like in their tier list. Like
Including me. Actually, I thought
including you,
Azuri was like
the
straight up worse than new.
Uzuri believer. But it's like I think from like a general sense, you think like, oh, new just has a better matchup spread. Why would you play Uzuri, right? So
Hmm.
you just throw her in the bottom tiers. But realistically, she still has like a similar matchup spread. Can is a bit favored probably in the assassin mirror. So then it's like, does she have more stock? This reminds me of like, okay, so like with Oldham and Bravo, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone will tell me, and I agree, Oldham is the
Oldham's
better
better.
Guardian.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you put Oldham in S or A tier and you put Bravo, at least back then, in like C tier, I'm like, that's not really true though. Like obviously, like I will agree Oldham's the better Guardian, but that doesn't necessarily de facto make Bravo C tier, you know?
Yeah, maybe he's like one tier worse, but is he? Is he like, especially in the mirror, right? Is Bravo really going to lose to Ultim like every time? Like, I wouldn't say so.
It depends on the meta a lot. Like when Oldham was hyper fatigue, Bravo, you can't beat that unless you also go hyper fatigue triple remembrance. But if they're going like mid range Anathos, that was probably like the best time I've had playing against Oldham as Bravo. I was like, oh, you're me, but I'm a little bit better.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just reminded me of that because you have the talented assassin, the non-talented assassin.
Yeah,
No one believes
yeah.
in the non-talented one until they win a pro tour.
Right, right, of course. Except Bravo has never won like anything major. Yeah.
Okay, to be fair though, like you could say the same thing about like Zen and Katsu, and you'd be like, yeah, like let's say Bonds wasn't banned. Like I don't think anyone would say Katsu is like in a great spot. So
I think Katsu is still not in a great spot. Like, okay, nobody brought Katsu to the Pro Tour, right? There was one Fi even.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, dude, they did Katsu so dirty
Yeah,
with the
Katsu,
bonds.
yep.
Like when I saw the bonds ban, I was like, I'm pretty sure Katsu runs blue bonds for like links and stuff.
Uh-huh. Yep. Back
Yeah.
to masculine momentum. Except everybody has a billion points of armor right now, so yeah.
Yeah, I remember in our last video
Bad
you said
times.
you talked about how Traverse was an insane card, and this was before people were like figuring out Zen and stuff. And I was like, you're probably right. And then, fast forward a bit, everyone's like, wow, this card is like really broken. Like there was even Gabe, right, the new that was running Traverse instead of Mask,
Hmm.
and I was like,
Yeah, which I think is crazy. Like I could see it as a sideboard option because if your game only goes for 3 turns, then maybe it makes sense. But
But he ran it in the new
yeah,
mirror.
yeah, I think that's kind of wild.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. I do know that like he said that he didn't really have the Uzuri experience, and I think he tried the fat deck style. I think the issue.
Oh yeah,
Because,
that's just wrong. So like actually, I think multiple of my new opponents tried to fat deck me. The issue with that is like new automatically has a better second cycle anyways. Because like once you get to second cycle, you're just like playing all of Azuri's blues from banish. So like Azuri is the impetus is on Azuri to kill
Azuri's
new
the
faster.
aggressor. Yeah.
Azuri is absolutely the aggressor, right? So like that's why you're running your scraps and like you gotta like push with like the spreading plays and whatever. And like the reason that still works and Azuri like is even to slightly favored in the matchup is that I think Azuri's first cycle damage is better. I think I've said this before where your attacks just do more damage, right? You got like a bunch of 6 power attacks, and then news over here like, oh, I got here's this 1 power attack, but I'm gonna give it like +3 and go again. Surely it's good, right?
Mhm.
2 card 4 go again, right? So like there's a lot of like, well, what if you just no blocks new and you throw back more damage, and you also have the same amount of disruption essentially. So I think like there's good reason to play. There's actually a good reason now to play Uzuri into the meta. I do caution anyone wanting to pick her up is that she's incredibly difficult. On a similar level as new, very difficult to play at a high level. So yep.
I think it's funny because I relate the assassin, or at least when I was watching those assassin mirrors, I was like, wow, this is the flesh and blood I like. It reminds me of Guardian mirrors a bit. The game goes long and you try to
Uh-huh.
eke out every point here and there. And I think that like
I also feel like
it's
I
also very
also
different
feel a
though.
little I feel a little bit miserable when I'm playing Assassin Mirror.
So it's
like
I think the thing is that like when people think about Guardian mirrors, they have the expectation like the better Guardian generally wins, and generally that is true. But like once you reach a certain point on both sides, like the variance does play a part, right? And the same goes for
of course.
the new mirror. Like Tarek, his sacred art got banished, and he just got fucked like right then and there, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but
And or also like uh with like with how kind of tight the turn cycles are, if you like claim tempo on one turn cycle and then you draw 4 reds, right? Like that could just be the end.
that's so Guardian. That's so good.
Like all your yeah, but like it happens way more with Assassin because like we run so many reds, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think yeah, but the point I was trying to make was that like at least in the Guardian mirror there is reason to fat deck, right? At least maybe not so much recently, but in the past it was like a point of contention whether you fat deck or whether you play clean 60. And a lot of people went to fat decking because it's like, "Oh, if I full block and they don't draw like another gas hand, then I can just like recover and I have like more like insulary, blocking cards in my deck to sort of do that. But when it comes to like new versus Zuri, the issue is that like so many of your card or like all your transcend cards don't block, so you can't default to like a blocking playstyle all the time. And it's also
and Uzuri doesn't want to fat deck either because like that dilutes your it makes your average turns worse, and you really need killer on first cycle. So
yeah. And the second thing is that like your D reacts are so powerful in the matchup against Uzuri. So if you fat deck, you dilute your D reacts.
Yeah.
And then the last part I would say is that if you do fat deck, you have to play a certain way. Like you have to overcommit to blocking in certain spots and just hope their next turn isn't gas. Like that's the style you commit to. And some turns I was like, he's kind of still playing that back and forth, which generally if you're fat decking, you're gonna run into some issues, like consistency issues if you try to do that. But yeah, it's interesting though. I don't know. I think it's still pretty early. I don't know if like the Assassin Mirror is like solved in any way, shape, or form, but
I do like the Uzuri mirror. I'm a fan like of playing Uzuri versus Uzuri, and I hope we get more of those now. Like if she becomes more popular, I think like in the Uzuri mirror, fat decking is correct, or like at least for my build. Like maybe not for a more aggressive build, but I think being able to just like go really long because you don't have that pressure of like my entire banish zone is going to be played against me, right?
Yeah.
So with that pressure out of the way, then you can actually play for like a very long like chippy damage game, and I really like that. So yeah.
All right, I think that was all the main points I wanted to cover. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, it was fun talking to you.
Do you have any other last notes that you might have wanted to talk about or anything else? Or maybe like what are your impressions on Rosetta? Let's talk about that a little bit because why not? We're already here. But like the
so I like what was that Earth card that like does 1 billion damage and disrupts? Yeah, Felling of the Crown. Okay. So this card is basically Codex, right? So like you have a condition where you need
yes.
where you need
stuff in your
like
grave,
the Earth cards. Yeah. So but like it's 2 cards for 8, and then it also removes a card, right?
Yep.
So that's basically like a dagger into Codex for CNC. Like it's like basically the same thing, which I find really interesting. But also like
but it blocks 3.
but yeah, Codex blocks only 2, but this is red, so that kind of makes up for it.
That's true.
But
I see. Yeah, but if it blocks 3 for the Earth Guardian, it means you can play it with Anathos, so it's like it's actually important.
But the Earth Guardian is blitz only, so who cares?
For now, it's out. You saw that Mastery Pack Guardians coming next year, man. That's honestly a big reason why my interest started to come back.
Why?
I was like,
oh, there's gonna be 160.
There's gonna be
160 Guardian cards.
Bright Lights Guardian version. Let's go.
Yeah, we're gonna get one of those for Assassin one day. Once new LLs, and then
you just had MST print you some of the most insane cards for Uzuri. What did Bravo get from heavy hitters, man? Thunk.
Thunk is not bad.
It's not. It's another popper. It's Zealous Consistency. It's a good card. But like you got Bonds of Agony and Persuasive Prognosis and Justinic.
Yeah, and Justinic, yeah.
Okay, like, so what do you think about the heroes though? Like, do you realistically? I'm
curious about this design.
We haven't seen enough yet, but like based on like your wording, like I would consider the Lightning Heroes level 0, right? Like they're just gonna do their thing, and the Earth Heroes are like. We don't really know what space they'll fill yet. Like maybe Florian is like a build-up OTK style, or maybe they're both more just like I don't know. Mid-range isn't a great word, but it's like they're slow to ramp up, and then once they do, they have good value.
How about this? Verdance is 40 life, and she has Storm Striders.
Okay, but like, what's the best card you're gonna be playing? Like Swell Tidings for 5?
The best card you're gonna the best card you're gonna be playing is Heart of Fandel. Because you're going to be, I think you're going to be building a deck where you cycle that 5 times, and that's how you kill your opponent.
Like in the end game.
Yeah, exactly. I think you could build a Verdansk deck because she's Earth, right? So Earth is like just automatically like the defensive deck. So like what happens when you like when you just build really tanky and then like at the end you just pitch Heart of Fandle and you gain a life and like you ping your opponent for 1.
I mean, it depends if she has an actual weapon or not, right? Because even then, arcane damage doesn't like get cards from their deck.
Does she get Waning Moon or is that ice only? No, she gets Waning Moon, right?
I think she does.
Yeah,
Because
like
Kano can play Waning.
Yeah, Kano can play Waning, so like she gets Waning Moon, right? So she gets that, and then like I'm sure she gets like the generic Earth attacks, right? She gets Felling of the Crown, which is like
I do agree
8.
that like the Earth heroes might be more of like the fatigue or like not fatigue like fatiguey attrition long game style. But the thing that worries me about Verdansk is that like arcane damage doesn't actually take cards from your opponent's deck. So there's like that like insulating factor. Whereas like Florian's at least split damage. But I mean also like with both these heroes, you probably do play some amount of attack actions because like they look really good, right? But
of course. But actually I think with Verdansk the thing I'm worried about is that I'm worried that Heart of Fandel is going to be mandatory for her, like even more so than it was for Icelander. And that's how much is Heart of Fandel right now?
I mean, it hasn't even really stonked even with spoiler season. Like it was sitting at like 250, 270. And like it hasn't.
Oh, okay. It's only $270 for one piece of cardboard. I'm sorry.
Dude, during Icelander, it was like 4. Okay, it's going up a little bit, but like it was like 400 plus or something. I feel like.
Right. So like this is like a bargain in comparison, right? If you want to play, if you like let's say what if you just really like flowers and dresses and you want to play Verdansk, and like okay I'm gonna need this card.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point.
Aesthetically, it even matches, right? Like look at Heart Fandel, look at Verdansk. Like come on, that just fits.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Also, Florian. I like Florian's design a lot. Where like he has a thing that just and to a lesser extent, Verdansk as well. I think Verdansk was like it kind of be like automatic. You're gonna have that eventually, but I feel like Florian. It's like you're really building towards that 8 Earth cards. Because then like you can like start shitting out auras, right? Like you're gonna have this like you're gonna have your early turns where you're kind of playing defensively and building up, and then you're gonna like try to turn the tide. So you're gonna have that natural like inflection point in your turn cycles where suddenly like you become the aggressor. So I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
I think just the scary part is like considering Zen, right? Like in games won't last that long. Like, do you just die when you finally get your 8? That's what worries me a little bit. And obviously there is the disruptive pieces, and we see this Felling card is like a disruptive piece. It requires
and you're gonna be running CNC, of course, 3 CNCs.
Yeah, CNC. Weakest link, you got your attack action stuff, so it's like you could probably extend the game a little bit, but at the same time, you got to get your Earth cards in banish somehow. And so far, we see this one, and so tomorrow banishes itself, so that's another factor, I guess. But I really
I don't think it's gonna be that hard. Like Felling of the Crown banishes 3 Earths, and then. Yeah, so banishes like another one. Like you play 2 Felling of the Crown, you're almost there, right?
Okay, but 2 Felling of the Crown, if they're equally distributed, that's like 2/3 of your deck, no?
But that's not too bad. Like again, Earth is the defensive hero. Like
that's true.
I think you can make it most of the way through first cycle.
I really like the Earth heroes, both design, flavor, and just gameplay. Which is weird because I've never played Runeblade or Wizard, but I might give them a shot. Because, I mean, I thought about coming back when MST came out, and then I was like, oh, Enigma actually seems pretty cool, New seems pretty cool and rewarding to play. And Zen, I was like, I played 5 back then, I might give Zen a run around. And then I was just like, I don't really feel like it, so I was like, maybe I'll just wait for the next set.
I didn't feel like flipping all my cards around every game either. So
or even like Channel the Millennium Tree, like I don't know how to feel about this card. Because it's like, it only amps the first thing. So it's like, can you really get like that much value out of this? Like you would need to pitch the first Earth card, play something like a zap. I don't know.
Well, this is what Channel Mount Heroic should have been. Like it should have been plus to the first attack you play, not like because like Channel Mount Heroic just makes it so you play 0 go again, 0 go again, 0 go again, right?
Because Channel Mount Heroic exists, is Florian and Verdansk not just like playing Scar plus E-Strike plus,
Oh, that'd be so miserable.
Because it's the best rate Earth. One of the best rate Earth.
If you're just doing the Briar thing,
if you're just
playing
doing Briar thing, but a little worse. But you have like some cool,
so depressing.
But you have like some cool new stuff, and then you randomly ping here and there. You randomly ping here and there. But yeah, we'll see. I don't realistically think that Rosetta will massively shake up the meta,
So
but who knows?
I do like these split cards. I like the meld cards. I think they're interesting because you can discard them to Auxilio, all the
Yes.
lightning ones. So and they block 3. So like this instance that block 3. That's waiting for something to happen here. Comet Storm. I mean, that's on rate for Arcane, and then you have an instant attached to it that you can discard. So
Yeah.
I wonder if there's going to be something you can do where you like just discard a bunch of instants and feel your graveyard for something. But also Channel Lightning value is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, more crazy in Auxilio, right? Because he's playing on both turns.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not too sure about Aurora playing it, but first time you deal damage. Because, like, if you randomly, like, I don't know, what is this one? Is this 0 cost? No, where's the 0 cost? What? Yeah, if you or they're not 0 cost, but if you randomly, like, shock them on their turn.
There's a 0 cost one for shock.
Yeah, it's
somewhere around.
All right, it's fine. But yeah, it's interesting. We shall see. We shall see. Set's almost out.
Yep.
Sort of. And everyone's basically on break now with the Pro Tour over.
Uh-huh.
All right, I think that's a good place to end the video.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Taotao.
Yeah, nice talking to you again, Alan.
Yep. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you have any questions for Taotao about Uzuri, be sure to leave them in the comments. And very likely he will not respond, but there's an off chance that he will. So.
And lube up for the next one.
Yep.
All right, see you.
See ya. Laters.